Alrighty. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today for our last installation of the Conservation Careers Series of 2023 with Georgia Audubon. Today, we have Ariel Moon, who will be presenting on her journey, her job, and kind of how we got here.
Yay, thank you. Let me get us all sharing and all of that good stuff. I'm really happy to be here and talk a little bit about what I do and what other people do. So let's see. This.
While she's getting that set up, if anybody has any questions or comments, please put them in the description bar. This will be posted to YouTube, so please put them in the comments below. There will be additional information, any supplemental information in the description box as well. And without further ado, go ahead.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the role that museums can play in conservation and environmental work. I think sometimes people think about museums as a place to just, go and look at stuff, and maybe you'll learn something if you read one of the labels or if someone's giving a tour. But museums can do so much more, and even the ones that you wouldn't expect, like ones that have some of the things on the screen, like hats or ice skates or basketballs. I think that a lot of education teams can contribute to teaching about things, even if they're not exactly what you would think is related. And we'll talk a little bit more about how they use their creativity to do that. But let's, I guess, jump on in and start learning about the museum world. All right. So hi again. My name is Ariel Moon, and I am an education specialist at a museum. Specifically, I work at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., and that's me right there in front of my huge museum. It has about 9 floors inside, and some of my favorite objects from my museum are right there on the screen for you. My museum is part of a larger group of museums known as the Smithsonian Institution. And I am very curious if some of the friends who are watching today have been to any of the Smithsonians or have heard about the Smithsonian Institution before, because a lot of people come to Washington, D.C. every year to visit, as you'll see here on the U.S. Capitol, the Washington Monument. Across the street over there is also the White House, and all of these different Smithsonian museums are right there, and usually where people are coming to take some of their vacations at the very least. So today I want to tell you more about all of the different kinds of museums and the work that they do. But first, we're going to start off with a little video intro just to give you more of a feel for who the Smithsonian is exactly. So, all right.
America, 1846. An audacious idea to grow and broadcast more knowledge than the world had ever seen. With an eye to the future, that dream was the Smithsonian, your Smithsonian. Expanding the portrait of a people, revealing the building blocks of life, to discover new species and save those we already know. A knowledge powerhouse with purpose and a community mindset. Inspiring a new generation to learn from the past. Speak up. Be civic. Serve a nation. So that together we can step into the future with optimism. No dreams deferred.
So, a couple of things to note about that video is that the Smithsonian is a huge collection of objects and art and photos and animals and specimens and all different kinds of things that actually belong to the American people of the United States. The Smithsonian is partially funded by taxes as well as money given by Congress. And so everything that is within the Smithsonian is actually one of the, our national treasures. The Smithsonian is about 175 years old, and over the years has added a lot of different kinds of museums, but really with all of them, no matter what they're about, is really just to spread knowledge about not only things that are here in the United States, but things that have happened all over the world. So within the Smithsonian, there's a lot of things I could talk about, but I decided maybe I could zoom in on some numbers for you all today. And we'll start with this number here, which is the Smithsonian is made up of 19 museums and 1 zoo. Now, right there on one side is where the central, what we call the Smithsonian Castle is, and that's where all of our the person in charge and all the things that they do is there. And then we have a lot of different kinds of museums. And I'm actually curious if I'd be able to name all 19 of the museums, but some of them include the African American History and Culture Museum, National Museum of Natural History, the American Art Museum, the National Zoo, the Portrait Gallery, the Postal Museum, the Asian Art Museum, the National Museum of the American Indian, the Air and Space Museum. There's so many different kinds, but some of them focus on a lot of different types of things. Some are really focused on one thing. So like the Air and Space Museum is very focused on the technology of flight and airplanes, or the Natural History Museum is focused on our natural world. So you'll see anything from dinosaur and whale skeletons to really small specimens and minerals. And so we'll talk about in a little bit, just no matter what your focus is, education around conservation or environmental education can stem from, or topics of STEM, and making our planet just a healthier, happier, sustainable place can happen at any one of our museums, any kind of museum. And one major way that happens is through the 8 different research centers that exist within the Smithsonian. So in addition to our museums, we also have 8 different centers that focus on different types of research and environmental work. So they're listed there on your screen, but I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the ones that are up there. So we have the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. That one is actually in Massachusetts. And that helps to advance our knowledge and understanding of the universe through research and education in astronomy, astrophysics, exoplanets, the sun, solar weather, asteroids, comets, all that kind of stuff. The Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, that one is in Maryland. So not all of our where we do our research and where we do some learning happens even in Washington, D.C. They're located all over the United States. And in Maryland at the Environmental Research Center, they focus on discovering the links between land and water ecosystems in the coastal zones. Researchers investigate questions related to fisheries and climate change and invasive species, mercury pollution, water quality, ozone depletion. So that all happens just at one of the centers. We have a marine station in Florida that specializes in marine biodiversity and ecosystems of Florida, and specifically focuses on the Indian River Lagoon there, as well as the offshore waters. And then a place that I really hope I get to go to one day is our Tropical Research Institute. That one is in Panama, and it's dedicated to increasing the understanding of the past, present, and future of tropical biodiversity and its relevance to human welfare, sustainability. One of their main, like more recent focuses of their research there has been on sustainable coffee farming and how to preserve the rainforest in South America and Central America. Also within each of these different research centers, there's often like different programs where either people are coming there to study for something very specific or they're doing particular outreach. And so just included in these, in this research is also, we have like a Smithsonian scientific diving program. There's a global volcanism, like volcanoes program. There's the Caribbean Coral Reef Ecosystems program. So there's a lot of different, let me move this out the way, 1 second. Hold on, I have something.
I was gonna say, I don't think we can see the bar.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, I just have, I just want to move, I had the chat popped up on my screen. Sorry about that. Okay. But within all of these, I think this is one of the, if you're looking at careers within the Smithsonian that are going to be very specifically dedicated to research or discoveries that are going to impact our environment and impact the way that we take care of our planet. A lot of it's happening in these research centers, which then feed into the museums and affect what we teach there at the museums. And so there's a lot of scientific discoveries happening all the time by Smithsonian scientists. I wanted to do a little trivia for you all. So let's see, which of these animals, could be one, could be all, could be two, were involved in recent Smithsonian scientific discoveries? So we have some flightless cassowaries, tuateras, direwolves, and deep sea fish. And someone thinks deep sea fish. The answer is all of them. All of these were a part of different kinds of discoveries that scientists have developed or discovered within the last couple of years. So one involving the deep sea fish that some people have guessed is that they're discovering that some of the coloration of deep sea fish is the most naturally, or the darkest black coloring that is naturally produced by Earth is being seen in some of the deep sea fish. Some other discoveries here is that, like, for example, the flightless cassowary, even though it's a very dangerous bird, that ancient humans were involved in raising. They would often raise some of these or take care of the cassowary. So just a couple of discoveries. Let's see what is next. All right, so all of these different discoveries, whether they were in the sciences or in the arts or in history, culture, whatever it is, have produced over 155 million objects. And that is everything. An object is something that you see when you go to the museum. So all those things that are often behind the glass, or even at the zoo, the animals count as objects within the Smithsonian collection. So on this page, if you can tell, this is a collection of Smithsonian objects from everything. We have birds, I like to say from birds to basketball. So some things that is very much in the science world, and very much something that is in our form of entertainment or culture. And so there's these things and things that are way smaller, things that are way bigger. But one of the things that I love about the Smithsonian is that just because we're learning about birds doesn't mean that the things that we have about birds are just maybe sciencey bird kind of thing. So we do have some birds that are live birds that are at the Smithsonian Zoo. We also have birds that are taxidermied, that researchers have collected and have studied. But then we have things like bird stamps or bird ceramics. We have art that has bird photography, things that were made by Native American communities inspired by the birds in their environment. And we have objects that even if it's just about one thing, maybe multiple museums might have something. So on your screen, we have almost every single one of the Smithsonian museums is represented, that a museum can talk about a lot of different types of topics. That's one of my favorite things. Now, because there are, like, within the Smithsonian, there are a lot of different kinds of things. It's become kind of known as the nation's attic, which is kind of like if you imagine all the things that you save in your closet or that your grandparents have saved from a long time ago, all of those kinds of things that have memories attached to them is what you'll find there. So the collection covers a range of topics. They can be really small things that you have to see with a microscope. They could be really huge things like an actual elephant or a train that we have. The research is always ongoing, so new things are always being added to the collection at the Smithsonian or at any museum, really. And also, not everything you see at the museum is everything that the museum has. So it's stored in a lot of different places because there are so many things. So because there's a few different things, I thought we could do a little bit more trivia to learn about some of the things at the Smithsonian or in the Smithsonian collections. The Smithsonian has a lot of things that have been around for a really, really long time that researchers and scientists can use to figure out how the world worked, how it's working now. Which of these objects do you think is the oldest that we have in the Smithsonian collection? We have the Hope Diamond, which is the largest diamond. We have some moon rock. We have the Allende meteorite, and we have a T-Rex skeleton. Someone guessed the meteorite. Any other guesses? And let's see what the answer is. The meteorite. The meteorite is roughly 4.57 billion years old, which makes it older than even Earth, even though it did just get to our planet in 1969, I believe. But the meteorite is the oldest. The moon rock is, I think, about 3.5 or 3.7 billion years old. The Hope Diamond was formed about 1 billion, and the T-Rex is the baby of the group at only 65 million years old. So another question for you all. That's a very good question that I don't know the exact number to. Thank you for asking that, though. Okay, these are also some pigeons that are within the Smithsonian collection. Which pigeon has won an award? A, B, C, or D? Some of these pigeons are alive at the National Zoo. Some are in other museums that are taxidermied. And the answer is this pigeon right here. Cherami was a messenger pigeon in World War I. And so after he passed away, many years after he passed away, in 2019, he received Animals in War and Peace Medal of Bravery for his actions in World War I, and was inducted into the Racing Pigeon Hall of Fame in 1931 and received a gold medal from the organized bodies of American pigeon fanciers. Okay, one more question about Smithsonian objects for you. And we have a lot of different inventions or patents at the Smithsonian. Again, that is involved in research, figuring out how we got from that to where we are now. But which of these objects at the Smithsonian was invented first? We have the Edison light bulb, the Bell telephone, the original Kodak camera, and the Terry box clock. We have a guess for the clock. Any other guesses? And some people here are on a roll. But the Eli Terry invented this box clock in 1816. It's not the oldest clock that there is, but this is the one that was invented first out of all of those items. And it made it a little bit easier for everyday families to have some form of telling time in their homes. All right, enough with our object trivia. Next number here is 25 million visitors. That's how many people come to visit the Smithsonian museums every year. But I don't think that number actually includes all of the people who visit us, let's say online, or use our resources, or go to online programs, since that is a newer thing. So these are the people like you all who are learning about the objects, who are learning from the scientists' research. And that's about 25 million people a year that are coming in a lot of different ways. Some people are coming on vacation from other countries or other states. There are school groups coming on field trips or for their class visits. There's family groups or people who are just coming on the weekend to enjoy themselves. There are a lot of different people who are coming, like adults who are coming after hours to maybe watch a documentary about something in the museum, or to listen to a talk from one of the curators or researchers. So there's a lot of different reasons to come into the museum, and a lot of different people who are coming every year. Now, in order, though, for all of these amazing people who are coming and visiting every year, some museums, by the way, will see like 4 million of those visitors in their own museum, where some people don't see that many visitors, depending on the size of the museum. But anyways, at the Smithsonian, there are over 6,500 employees. And that's what makes it possible for all of our visitors, when they do come to the museums, to learn something. And so there's a lot of different kinds of roles. That was something that I realized when I came to work at a museum, which was like over 10 years ago now. I didn't realize that there were so many different kinds of jobs, but these are just 5 of the types of jobs. These are just 5. But there's educators like myself. There are scientists and researchers. There are curators, and those are the people who do research to gather different pieces and things to bring into the museum. There's exhibition workers, which are people who design the inside of the museum so that people can come in there and learn in different ways. And then there's also people involved in care and conservation of the objects or the animals. So someone like a zookeeper is technically seen as both a scientist kind of like role and also a care and conservation role, because they're protecting or caring for a collection object, which happens to be a live animal. But it could also look like taking care of things that are really, really old in our museum, so that they don't, so that they last a really long time. Now, we learned a bit about what the scientists and researchers do. and the kind of all the different kinds of topics that they can learn about, that they do work around at the Smithsonian. But I want to focus on specifically what educators like myself do, because something that I think is the reason why it's really important that there's educators within museum spaces or involved in conservation and environmental work is because in order for people to change the world in any kind of way, whether that's in their choices that impact the environment or within our society and culture, the things that we do, they have to know it exists and they have to care about it enough. And that's what I think is the role of educators everywhere, and especially within museums, is that in order for people to want to take care of our environment, they have to build some sort of knowledge about it and then believe that it's something worth protecting or worth taking care of. And so we have a really important role of sharing knowledge and building empathy and awareness. So as an educator, some people on this screen are actually some friends of mine and also a picture of me up there, but we teach school groups, we teach adults, we teach families, college students, and tourists from around the world. I really love that about my work, is that I am talking to all kinds of people at all different ages. We can educate learners at the museum, or we can go to different states and countries. Later today, for example, I'm flying to Ohio to teach about some things in my museum in the local neighborhood that the museum exists in, as well as online. So we can teach in a lot of different kinds of environments, which means we reach a lot of different kinds of people. And then the way that we teach can look really different too. We can lead demonstrations. So like I think on our screen, we have a tortoise feeding demonstration. We have a wood carving demonstration going on up there. There's hands-on activities, classes, tours, lessons, field trips where you're either coming to the museum or we're going somewhere together, and so much more. And let me see if there we go. I wanted to give an example of one of the ways that I have taught about something in relation to environmental work or conservation, because at my museum, we talk about the history and culture of African Americans. So we do have a STEM specific educator, but that's not my role specifically. However, a lot of museum educators find ways to use the collection of objects that they have at their museum to talk about a lot of different things. So one way I did that this year for Black Birders Week is I found a painting in our collection by an African-American artist named Clementine Hunter. And she actually has a handful of paintings that show regular everyday life, but including birds. And so this one is includes some ducks. And I thought about, okay, we have a painting with ducks. What else could we learn about ducks, for example? And so I brought in a friend, colleague, Dara Miles Wilson, and she taught us a lesson on migration. And we talked about the importance of preserving natural spaces for birds to use during their migration. And so students that attended our online program could learn about the way, not only learn about different kinds of ducks, but then maybe also learn about ways that they could help take care of the natural spaces in their communities, or be involved in making sure migration season was a safe season in their city, for example, with like turning lights off in big buildings. I then connected it to our national zoo and all of the ducks that we have there. So I didn't just focus on my museum's object only. I brought in my our other museum, the National Zoo, and we learned about the different birds that they have right now. And then we did an art activity and a lesson about the specific duck. So this one is a green-winged teal, but there's also the ruddy duck, which is one of my favorites that we did a painting of as well. But I think this lesson is a good example of how I didn't just focus on the African American artist, which is also a very important thing to learn about, but connected it to something a little bit larger and got a little bit creative with it. And that's something I really enjoy about my work. Now, I talked a lot about the Smithsonian, and we have a lot of different locations everywhere, but we're specifically located in Washington, D.C., right? But there are Smithsonian affiliate museums all over the United States, including Georgia. And it looks like the Georgia Smithsonian affiliates are actually all science-based museums. So that's pretty cool. So these are just a few of them. That are in Georgia specifically that are Smithsonian affiliates, but there's a lot of non-Smithsonian affiliates, right? So there's a lot of different kinds of, or different museums in different places that focus on different things that are also doing this kind of work that have all of these different elements, the people behind the scenes, the objects in the museum, and the educators who are giving you some more information. This is where I will pause for today in sharing about all that the Smithsonian does, but even more generally, the things that museums do, the research and the education around a lot of different topics, and the ways that you could find something of interest to you and find a way to get involved in either gathering more information or sharing more information. But other than that, I just want to say thanks everyone for listening and learning with me today. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have. And I will share some links that I have for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I didn't know the Smithsonian was as big as you said that it was, and now I definitely have to visit. I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
My first one is, how did you get into a job at the Smithsonian? Like, what brought you there?
Yeah, so I really loved museums growing up. And I really loved art, actually. So it was something that when I went to college, I was like, okay, I wanted to I studied art history in college. And during college, I had a couple internships at museums, and I had a couple choices on either I could be behind the scenes doing the research on the artwork and the objects that were in the museum. But I kind of preferred talking to people about the things. And so when it came time to figure out, okay, what was I going to do? I decided that I didn't want to continue doing research on the things. I rather talk to people about it. So I went and got my master's in Washington, D.C. In museum education at the George Washington University. And so that was where I really discovered the Smithsonian. And I thought I'd work in an art museum, but ended up getting my first job at a history museum. And then now 10 years later, I'm still at another history museum and trying to make history interesting for specifically for younger kids. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. My second question is, are there some skills that would be great to have a job like that as an educator? Like, are there some skills that you picked up on that you said, this is necessary for me?
Yeah, I really, really think that in order to work at a museum, whether you're an educator or behind the scenes doing scientific research or research on objects, you need to be very curious, and you need to ask a lot of questions and wonder a lot, and just keep asking and asking questions, because there's so much information out there to learn. And sometimes it's easy to just stop where someone tells you, oh, the sky, I don't know, the sky is blue. And instead of asking why, we just might accept that as a fact kind of thing. But to keep asking why, you just open up so much. I don't know, it makes the world a lot more interesting. And I think that's something that is important in my job, is to make our world more interesting for other people. But I would say asking a lot of questions and wanting to wanting to know more is a really important, actually a skill, definitely a skill.
I do have another question. What are all of the items in the museum authentic and preserved, or are some of them replicas?
So I think very few objects at the Smithsonian are replicas. Um, I think there are some sometimes that, but it will very specifically be like it'll maybe something will be in a case, for example, to kind of say like, oh, this is what like at the Natural History Museum, they might have like a bear in there, taxidermied in there, but then they may have a replica of like what his fur would feel like. So it might be something that's an example of what we have that's real. But that is something I think it's because of our national like status and size that we usually don't have replicas, but a lot of smaller museums do have it. And I think that it doesn't necessarily make one better or the other, you know. I think the whole goal is just to give people an opportunity to experience something up close. So yeah, I don't think that there's I'm not aware of any particular replicas of anything in there.
Okay, that's good to know about. I'm always curious when I go to the museum. I'm just like, I wonder if this is real. Like, is this really what it looks like?
And if it isn't, it'll say it very specifically that it's not. And I think that like, so a lot of people come to the Smithsonian that is, they may not work there, but they use we have libraries. There's so many things. We have libraries, we have opportunities specifically at the Natural History Museum, where if you study like a particular animal or something like that, you could request to come and see the actual, so not just go to the museum, but go to the storage space and do research. And it's a very careful way you have to do it, I guess. But a lot of people use our collections in their research for, let's say they're writing, you know, their dissertation for a PhD, or they're trying to do even sometimes a project at school. They come, so it's important that the things there are authentic, so that they are gathering real data. And there's also just like, there's not just like objects, but there's papers and books and things that you can also need to like analyze closely and read.
Awesome. I have one more question, and then I think
Okay.
Sherry might have some questions. Thinking back to your first experiences in a museum, I know I love the advice of being curious and asking questions. Do you have any other pieces of advice that you would offer to young people that may not know, but may find museums interesting and may want to get into this later in life?
I think I understand your question. One thing I will say is that anything that someone is interested in there's a job for it at a museum. It's one of those places where there is so many different. Today we talked about the way that the content is like created for a museum, for example, but there is so many different kinds of things. So I think that even if someone is interested in something that is not, that they wouldn't think was at a museum, that we thought is just a different kind of job, that it would be something that is there, is something that's really exciting. But one thing also is that like I feel like when I was growing up, I thought I liked museums, but I know that a lot of people thought they were pretty boring. And I think museums are changing. I think that they change when new kinds of people come to them, to not just visit, but to work there. And so you bring your personality or your style to the museum. And so museums, I think, yeah, usually you might be on a really long field trip and can feel kind of like, yeah, I don't care about this stuff in here. But there are places that are changing the way that we talk about things, as well as every museum's a little different. So I feel like I don't know. I really think that they're becoming a place where all different kinds of people can find something that they love at. I don't know if that really answered your question, but
That absolutely answers my
that's my
question.
thoughts.
I was gonna say that kind of leads into my question, and If Kiana doesn't have any more, it could be the last one as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it kind of leads into my question, which is you mentioned what you like most about your job, which is like exposing people to the information and especially the youth. But I wanted to know what is the coolest thing to you about your job? Like what are you, I don't know, excited about doing, I guess.
Um, the coolest thing for me is definitely, I guess, a couple things. One is that I think it's pretty cool to be that like my office place, like where I go to work every day, is the same place that we might have, like specifically at my museum, where we have like something that Rosa Parks actually wore like on her body, or that we have like an instrument that that a musician that I really love actually used. I think it's really special to work somewhere where you are amongst things that are also special to you, not just to like the to other people, I think it's really cool that I go to meetings in buildings where there is like a huge like whale like skeleton hanging over you as you like walk to your meetings, or where like I get to like I went to a meeting a couple months ago at the zoo, and while we were having the meeting we just decided to walk around, and we were like, I don't know, like just like having a meeting but looking at flamingos, and a flamingo
Right.
had their nest had and was sitting on their egg there, and I was like, but then I'm like taking notes about something completely different. So I just feel like it can feel really cool even after like 10 years to get to be near like such significant and special things. I'm a big collector in like my personal life. Like I love memories and little things, and I keep souvenirs from different things. And so like it kind of feels like that. Like I feel like I'm at like a souvenir shop of the world, and I just see like stuff all the time. Like when I worked at the American History Museum, they have a collection of the Sesame Street characters, like some of the original like puppets, and like sometimes it would just like in one of the conference rooms, the curators would bring out the objects carefully, and set them up in there, and you could like come and just like look a little closer than the visitors get to,
Yeah.
and it just felt really magical to like, I don't know, be face to face with like Cookie Monster, so yeah, I think that's probably one of the coolest things. It's really special, and like I've seen so many cool things and cool people that come. There's a lot of celebrities that come to my museum that's cool to see them. So
It
yeah.
does sound very fun.
I definitely encourage everyone to check out the Smithsonian museums. After all, you said there are 19 of them in a zoo.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and I don't know if it's helpful to share in the chat right now, or maybe I'll share with you all. I have a list of just like links to the list of all the research centers, and so they can learn more about that or our affiliates, things like that, because pretty much wherever you are located, there's going to be some way to be connected to museum work or the Smithsonian or one of the research centers or something. So I'll make sure I share that as well.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming today and sharing a little bit about what you do for work. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure Sheridan did as well. And I hope that everyone that's joining us or that takes the time to view this video really considers a career in museums. They sound really, really cool. And
Yeah.
career. So thank you for closing out our conservation career series for 2023. I'm excited for what 2024 will bring, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, everyone go to a museum soon.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.